Hello, and welcome to the 49th episode of Circus History Live. I'm Bruce Hawley, president of the Circus Historical Society. Circus History Live is produced monthly by the CHS. Recordings of previous sessions are available on the Circus Historical Society YouTube channel, along with 65 other recordings of our Circus History Spotlight channel. And now, for tonight's program, let me welcome our guests, former Clyde Beatty-Cole Brothers Circus Band members, Charlie Bertini and J.P. Cunningham. And here's the host of Circus History Live, Chris Berry. Chris?
Thanks, Bruce. So when we decided to put together this particular episode of Circus History Live, I was really excited because we have not done one on circus musicians and circus music. And the people who have responded to this include a lot of circus musicians, so I'm sure this won't be the last that we see of this. Charlie Bertini, you were the bandmaster on the Clyde Beatty-Cole Brothers Circus for a number of years, started when you were 19 years old. J.P. Cunningham, you spent 25 years with the Clyde Beatty-Cole Brothers Circus. So we've got some stories to tell today. I'm going to start off basically by sharing a little drawing by the great circus artist, Ray Durgo. Now, this is your band in 1978. Ray Durgo, of course, was a cartoonist. For Hanna-Barbera, he did the Jetsons and the Flintstones, but he came to your bandstand at least once and did a terrific cartoon. Tell me about these guys.
Ray was a great friend of everybody in the circus because he would come. He was a big circus fan, and he would draw sketches, not just of the band, but of different performers and stuff. So he was a friend to everybody, and of course, he was really good at what he did. So we were all honored to, have the cartoonists of his level draw our pictures.
And when I take a look at this, I see you two guys are here. Jim, you're first chair trombone. Charlie, you're leading the band here. This looks like it was done in Chicopee, Massachusetts back in '78. Now, by 1978, you had both been on the circus for quite some time. You were both on the circus for some time in 1978. So when you look back on those days and kind of getting started, it was really Chuck Schallerbaum who brought you both on. Tell me a little bit about that. And tell me a little bit about your own history in music, starting with you, Charlie.
Well, the reason why I got my job in 1971 with the circus was because I was already a union musician, and Schallerbaum would advertise in the Union International Musician. Back then, it was a newspaper, and so I would see these ads every month for oboe player wanted for the Houston Symphony, and the military bands looking for this and that. So I saw circus musicians to travel with the world's largest circus under canvas was how it was titled. So I sent him my photo and resume, and Schallerbaum hired me. I was 19, and I was already in a band in my hometown. So I wanted to keep making money playing my trumpet. So that's how I got my gig.
And you started playing trumpet when you were in third grade. So by the time that you had your own dance band in ninth grade, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Now, when you take a look at your career, JP, you were right behind him. You were in the Navy band and you got out. Tell me a little bit about how you got into the circus business.
Well, I sent out some resumes through the International Musicians magazine, several of them. I got a call from Schallerbaum in 1971, but maybe November. Be at LaGuardia Airport if you still want to do it. I said, sure, I'll do it. Have two pair of white shirts, pair of black pants, shoes, black socks, ties. I'll have somebody pick you up at LaGuardia Airport and drive you out to Comac, Long Island Arena. I said, fine. Little did I know this Ricker McConnell, he must have played drums at one time or cymbals on some circus, all the way from LaGuardia out to Comac. Don't feel bad if you can't do it, because a lot of good musicians can't play circus music. He had me half afraid. So he dumps me off at the arena, and I meet Big Al Pavlovich from Ohio. And I said what this guy said, I don't know if I can do it or not. You were in the Navy. All we do is play marches and gallops and a few songs. You can do it. What about this guy over here playing euphonium? Long, black, curly hair. Abel Cortinas from Corpus Christi, Texas. I said, listen, he sounds great. Maybe I can't do it. Don't worry about him, Big Al said. Don't worry about him. He won't be here long. Why not? Look at his hair. His hair. He could have played with Lawrence Welk. He can play. He's not even a baritone player anyway. He could play all the woodwind instruments. And I said, but look at him. He said, it doesn't matter. He couldn't play on Lawrence Welk's band. He won't be able to play here either. So sure enough, 10 days go by. I'd memorized the book. So did this Abel Cortinas. But I wasn't an idiot. I brought the book out to the bandstand with Slarbaum there. This guy didn't do it. Slarbaum just waited for the opening because he wouldn't get his haircut. So then we had seat wagons, remember, right on both sides of us. Yeah, so everybody could hear everything's going on. So Slarbaum changed something. This kid was completely lost. Then went on. F-U-F. This goes on and on. So I turned to Big Al. I said, what'd I do? And he says, keep playing. And the guy, that was it for him. But I think it was more than just not getting his haircut. He had so little respect for circus music. And Slarbaum saw that too. So he was gone. And he wouldn't allow it too long anyway, probably. Not.
So let's talk a little bit about Chuck Schallerbaum. He started his career with Christiani Brothers. He was with Hunt Brothers. He came over to the Beatty Show. He was even probably one of the last traditional circus band leaders when he was with Toby Tyler. But he was kind of a quirky guy, right?
Well, he's got
That's a good word, quirky. That works, yeah.
I mean, you talked about the hair thing. I mean, he really was pretty demanding in a lot of ways, is my understanding. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was old school.
He's old school.
It was the early 70s, and so this was we would drive our circus trucks, and there were signs that said "Beautify America, get a haircut." This was that time. So when Schleiber wanted you to get a haircut, that picture there, the hair in that picture is pretty long by his standards.
That's long for his standards.
Yeah. So
this at this time, Charlie, you are now assistant bandmaster on the Clyde Beatty-Cole Brothers Circus, but it looks like you're a kid really. You must have had pretty good talent as a trumpet player, but tell me what's going on here and what you would do as the assistant bandmaster.
So you see in the front there to the left in the photograph is the calliope, and so they would bring that in. It was converted from steam calliope to electric, but they would bring it in when we had a dry lot and it was easy to maneuver because it was really heavy. Well, then certain acts, Chuck would come off the bandstand down to the ground there and sit at the calliope and play that, which was actually a really great traditional sound for the poodle act and things like that. And so when he did that, I had to come off this stand down to the front and conduct the band because he couldn't conduct from down there on the ground. And he would also play his trumpet sometimes while he's sitting at the keyboard. And so that was kind of a cool thing that we had once in a while. It wasn't always like that because
he was truly one of the last guys. And here's a photo of him actually playing the trumpet at the calliope here. But he was truly a traditional circus bandmaster. And when you listen to the recordings of the circus during that time, the Clyde Beatty-Cole Brothers Circus, it was the similar arrangements. It was similar music that Merle Evans and the guys from decades before had played, right? And you were able to continue that on after he left.
And Chris, just take a look at that little Coke cup there because there's another story later about that. But I just want you to notice that.
I got a story about Slarbaum. I mean, this one guy said, I'm doing the best I can do. And Slarbaum said, well, I guess your best just isn't good enough. And I admired that. If you can't play, get out. So Slarbaum didn't mince words. He said, go try harder. No, to get out. If you can't play, get out.
Well, you told me that, I think, JP, you told me once about the drummers, how they went through drummers on the show one season.
Charlie knows.
Yeah, 11 drummers in 1973. And I was one of them because Schleiber fired so many drummers that he kept a drum kit in the back of the prop truck. And when he fired a drummer or a drummer would just leave, then we'd have to get the drum set up and I'd have to play drums until he got another drummer.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So I'm going to try to, at this point, play some music for you. When we think back on the shows of that day, and of course I was one of the people who watched you guys play back in those days too. One of the things that impressed me about the band at that time was when Dave Hoover would come out and you would start that big wild animal act that he had. It was basically the same arrangement that had been used for many years for Clyde Beatty. It starts off with part of the William Tell Overture, right?
Yeah,
Charlie?
the storm scene from William Tell. Yeah.
Okay, so this is, if you'll recall your music history, the William Tell was an opera that Rossini had written a couple hundred years ago. And when you take that William Tell music and you put it to a circus tempo, it really kind of changes things, doesn't it, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what it does. It was really very fast.
Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to try to listen to a few minutes of this, and you can hear these two guys and the rest of the show band. I think this is from 1973, playing the very start of Dave Hoover's Wild Animal Act. And here we go. William Tell Overture. And of course, that's not, in a studio or anything. I mean, that's basically under canvas, some lot, someplace. It's just amazing to hear how you guys could play that. But when you think about it, these circus bands, I mean, you played for a couple of hours straight with really basically no break, right? And that's maybe one of the reasons why, JP, maybe they thought you couldn't hack it.
Well, he told me, even though this guy picked me up, he knew I was in the Navy, played in a Navy band. He probably felt like I couldn't make it. And even the lead trombone player, I said, well, maybe I can't do it. Big Al said, well, just listen to what Kennedy tells you. He had false teeth, uppers and lowers. How he could play with very little pressure. I played with too much pressure, really, I did. So, but I was young. I could get over it. But he told me one word. He said, pace. Don't try to play too loud. We're just background anyway. That's all we are. So, but I didn't listen to him anyway. I played too loud. And after the first show, I went outside and I sort of dry heaved. My lips were puffed up. I said, how am I going to play the next show? But I struggled through. Slarbomb didn't scream at me, so I only got better after that. But
I have a similar story from my first experience. So, like I said, I was 19 and I was playing second trumpet, which we called suicide second, because Chuck would play the first parts, and then the first trumpet player would play the next strain, and so you switch off, but the second player plays everything. So I was playing, and he was yelling at the drummer. He was yelling at this guy, yelling at that guy. I said, man, I'm just going to keep playing. There's no way I'm going to stop playing anything because I don't want this guy to yell at me. And so after the first show, my chops were all cut up inside and everything. So I went and got some ice. I went in my bunk in the band sleeper, pulled the curtains, and put the ice on my chops and cried until the next show at 8:00. And it took about 6 weeks for all the swelling and bleeding to go down and everything. That was my experience. And so I said, there's no way I'm going to go home. I'm going to figure this out.
I wasn't going to let this Rick McConnell win out either. So I was going to do it,
That is amazing. Now here's a photograph. This is pretty early on in your circus career, guys. And Charlie, tell me, I mean, I see Roger Boyd, the ringmaster there. I see Chuck Schallerbaum standing there right above him on the bandstand. Tell me a little bit about this band and what's going on here.
Well, you see that quarter pole there, and then I'm right next to that quarter pole, which was the second trumpet chair. The guy in the middle, yeah. And so also Ty Chan on drums, who went on to be a fabulous drummer on the Ringling Circus, and his brother Archie Chan was on the blue unit. Ty went on the red unit, but this was before that. Anyway, Roger Boyd and Schlarbaum would get those Coke cups like you saw earlier from the candy butchers, you know, and they'd each give me a Coke, and I'd put it under my stand, and then always when Roger came to the show before the show started, he'd give me a bottle of bourbon, and it was usually like Wild Turkey or George Dickel Sour Mash whiskey or something like that. And then my job as second trumpet player, while I'm playing Suicide Second, is to dump out some of the Coke and fill it up with bourbon. And those two guys drank through both shows, the matinee and the evening show. And that was my gig, was, you know, bartender, so to speak.
And I found out later that Kennedy would drink chocolate Yoo-hoo and Kahlua.
He's in the back, in the back row, right in the middle is Dave Kennedy.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about those days. You know, it's the early 1970s. This is a time when your contemporaries are probably more tuned into the Rolling Stones and, you know, Jefferson Airplane than playing jazz or Dixieland or circus music. But this is something that you guys both loved for a long time. Tell me a little bit about that, Charlie.
I loved it because I already kind of grew up as a kid listening with my dad to Dixieland records, Al Hurt, ragtime records and stuff. So we were big fans of Americana music, my dad and I. So this was an easy, you know, move for me to go into the circus because it was full of the kind of music I was already familiar with. And I was also a Beatles fan and everything else. But this, you know, there was no trumpets in the Beatles or Rolling Stones or any of that stuff. So this was okay. And I was a big fan of getting a paycheck every week for doing something I love doing, which was play my horn.
And it was a union band too on the circus, right?
Yeah, this is American Federation of Musicians. Pamphlet B was a touring contract, and so the Broadway shows had that. We had that. The pay wasn't that great for these traveling shows, but I remember Schlarbaum in one of his drunken speeches saying, "This gig pays pension. You guys will thank me someday." And I thought, pension? What is that? I'm 19, you know, so I'm thanking him now.
Yeah, I mean, when I quit in 72, after taxes, I cleared $130, and which was pretty good. I could live off of $30. I sent $100 home, just like Charlie did, and my mother put it in the bank. And we traveled every night. We'd stop in diners and eat, and I'd do my laundry, and I still had money left over.
Yeah, me too.
So this is that 1973 band, and as you can see, I mean, it's not all old timers by that time. I guess he kind of made a change, I think, about 1971, and a lot of the newer faces came on. We're going to talk about faces in a little bit too, but
we went to younger guys after the '72 season. McCluskey got he got mad because some of the older guys, they wanted to get paid what the people in Philadelphia and Chicago and New Orleans got paid. They wanted to get that money. No, we had international musician scale, so he wasn't going to pay anymore. He got rid of the old guys, and that's when the younger guys came on. And you'll notice I'm leaning far away from the German tuba player because he wasn't all that clean. So I'm sort of leaning toward the tent. So we still had a couple old guys sit in.
And you can get 10 pictures of the 1973 Beatty Band, and there'll be different personnel and all of those, except Schlarbaum and J.P. and me. We were consistent. Padden was there too the whole year. So Jeff
Schlarbaum only screamed at me one time, and he tried to change the tempo of this one song or something. So all the guys in the band after it was 72, I guess it was. Oh, Chuck, we love it. Oh, Chuck, keep it up like that. We want that tempo. We like it like that. So he finally gets to me. Hey, he wanted the truth. I said, well, it sounds a little bit Ricky-Ticky to me. You don't say anything like that to Schlarbaum. So he turns toward the center ring. He thinks for a couple seconds. He turns around. And more hurtful than mad, well, Ricky-Ticky bus ticket for you, too, if you don't like it around here. But he went right back to playing the old tempo. So I don't care. He asked me what I thought, and I told him. It didn't sound too good to me.
So we talk about traditional circus music, and of course those trombone smears that Henry Fillmore wrote, which have been associated with clown acts and other things, are really part of that traditional sound. I'm going to play a little bit of again the Beatty-Cole. I think this is 1973, and you'll hear J.P. Playing one of those trombone smears. So let's give this a shot.
Flip and tear.
Have you played any tunes like that in the Navy?
Not quite. No, nothing like that. But I mean, I liked it. I could play loud. We had no microphones back then. I never liked them. And I could see Jim Haverstrom's there, and he had microphones by that time. So, but that's okay. I still played loud.
Chris, can I say something though?
Absolutely.
You've got a lot of Beatty boys logged in here, and
Yep.
I just want to say hi and recognize them, and so glad that they've signed up. And several more band leaders, like G. Nichols is on, Nanny Goat. He was a band leader. Jim Haverstrom's on. He was a band leader, trumpet player. I don't know if Marshall Elkelman's on here, but he
Clark Weigle's on there.
huh?
Clark
Clark
Weigel.
Weigel, he was a bandmaster too. And I think Mark Glazel was supposed to log on. His dad was the professor that we talked about.
Yep, Mark's with us.
Yeah.
Jim Butoff.
And Jim Butoff, if he's on, he was a trumpet player on my band for several years. So it's just so nice to see all these cats on there. I just want to recognize them because they know these stories and 1,000 more, and they have their own as well. So,
Well, I'm going to show you something else that they all know. There it is, number 34, home. Can you believe you guys lived in a truck like that for an entire season?
Yeah, half the truck.
Yeah.
Years?
Yeah, I drove that truck too for a while.
So tell me a little bit about we've talked about the performance, but the stuff that happened behind the scenes in the back lot. I mean, how many guys slept in that trailer?
It's 7 or 8, depending on, what, if it was Schlarbaum, he had his own camper. So,
That's that one time he wrecked it. And he hit the stanchion on the Verrazones Bridge. He had to stay. But that was an experience too. He came in one night and he couldn't find a urinal. We had to turn him around. But I don't know if you're not fluffy, but
living in there was, we didn't really think it was bad. I have to say this: when I was on the band in '71, you could see the windows there. They were tinier. They were half the size, and there was no insulation. So when you laid in your bunk, you were laying next to the steel, to the aluminum, and the ribs of the aluminum, and it obviously it wasn't insulated. It was hot as hell.
no air
So when I left with another guy, we told the AFFM, the union, about the living conditions, and the union came and inspected it because don't forget it was a union contract. They inspected it and they made them put bigger windows, insulation, paneling, and but we still had a gravity cold water shower, and we still had a urinal which just had a hose that went down to the ground.
in a 40-gallon water tank with just a little pipe coming down. But we'd take hose showers when we played fairgrounds. So clean.
So that the whole idea of hygiene is obviously something that people think about today. Also, living in that environment for so many days, performing a couple of shows a day, pretty much 7 days a week. A lot of times, moving in those early days, moving every single day. I mean, you wouldn't think that was really a job for an older person either. It must have been pretty interesting traveling with those guys.
Yeah, some of those older guys, I mean, they would do their drinking at night. They'd be all right for the shows. They could get through. They could play all day. But when we got harder music, I don't think they could have.
This is a pretty young looking group here, probably sometime in the mid 1970s, early 1970s.
That's 74.
Yep,
That's 74. So I'm in the front row, and the guy on the right is Spud Face. He was from Idaho. We named him Spud. And so Schlarbaum told me we got a new second trumpet player coming on, and he's from North Texas State. Well, that's one of the best jazz music schools. And so I was really intimidated by this because I thought, oh man, this guy's going to, Schlarbaum's going to hear him play, and he's going to say, Bertini, move down, and move Spud, up into my chair. And so I was really, intimidated by this guy being there. So we did the first show, and he played good, read good and everything. So we did the first show, and he says, can I talk to you? And so he says, you got to tell me what's going on, man. I have no idea what's going on. You got to help me. I go, yeah, I'll help you out. Don't worry. So.
Yeah, but we found out he's from North Dakota or someplace like that. So Charlie goes, oh, what's in North Dakota? Potatoes? So he got the name Spud Face.
Spud, yeah.
So let's talk a little about those nicknames. Nicknames have been a part of circus environment forever, but you kind of had a unique group of nicknames on the show. Everybody kind of had a face name, right? I mean, tell me a little bit about your name, Charlie, and how you got it.
Yeah. So the first year I was on the show, when I was playing second trumpet and I was bartender, I had a little tiny mustache, and it was I don't think I was even shaving yet. When you have those little black hairs on your chin and little mustache here, and so I really thought it was cool. Like I'm growing a mustache, and so I didn't shave it, and so in the band sleeper they were all older guys. They go, "What's that crap on your face?" I'm using better words than they said. Yeah. I said, that's a mustache. And they go, that's not a mustache. That's a shrub. We're going to call you Shrub Face. And so I hated that, man. So I shaved, I shaved it. I hadn't shaved probably my whole life. I shaved it off, and then I said, you can't call me Shrub Face anymore. And they go, oh yeah, you stinking Shrub Face? You're Shrub Face. And that was it. That's how I got that. So, but I think nicknames, face names have been around. Merle Evans had them for his guys. Oh, yeah. And there's a 3-record set where of Merle, and one of those sides of the records, he talks all about the nicknames. It's pretty cool. But, fighter pilots have nicknames, Maverick and all that kind of stuff. And so it's not new, but I don't think accountants have nicknames and stuff, but the musicians do,
I never had a face name, really. Oh, maybe I did.
Howdy Doody Face.
Yeah, Howdy Doody Face.
Has too many syllables.
I had no mustache for.
So, who are some of the other face names that? And how did you get a face name, JP?
Well, I had a gap between my 2 front teeth, so of course, I guess I did look a little bit like Howdy Doody. So anyway, I grew a mustache, and I kept it for many years. And my first wife, we went back to Bloomington, Illinois, and I went upstairs. I think I'll shave this mustache off. I didn't have a goatee at that time. I think I'll shave it off. I came downstairs, and my wife and her mother, they both laughed. The mustache has been on ever since. So I'm not going to shave it.
I think the question was, how do people get face names, though?
How do they get them? Well, yeah. I don't know. They look like something, I guess, or it depends on where you came from.
Usually, you earned a face name.
You have to earn it
without knowing it.
So who are some of the face names on this picture right here? Do you recall?
Yeah. Let's see. Well, German's the guy with the tuba. Horst Geyer. He was German.
He's from Germany, but I mean, he was more of a Russian. He rushed the temples, everything.
Yeah. Not too many face names here because the professor, Lee Glazer, we just called him Professor. He didn't have a face name.
And that drummer, on the end, I don't even know what
his name was. Greg somebody. He wasn't there very long, but nobody was that year.
Jeffrey Padden, the other trombone player, I don't think he had a face name.
Padden didn't have one either, no.
So once you decided, how do you go through the process? Don't you have to?
So if somebody does something probably embarrassing or whatever, then 3 face names, 3 guys who already have official face names can decide, all right, Jim Derrick jumped off the sleeper into the mud and rolled around to try to be funny. So then 3 guys who already have face names decide he's going to be Mudface, and so the 3 guys have to shake on it, and then that becomes the face name.
You're not supposed to like it either, of course.
No, not really.
Now
And sometimes people would get face names that weren't even in the band. Then that was seen as a badge of honor if you were given a face name. I think Bonnie Nicholas said she had a face name for a while.
Yeah, in this picture here, in the back is Jeff Padden on trombone, but next to him is Gene Holm. So Gene came on the band to play second trumpet, and the guy he was replacing had an upper bunk in the band sleeper. So nobody's going to move. You get that upper bunk. Well, Gene was a big guy, man, probably 300 pounds. And so he'd sit up in that upper bunk, and he would sit cross-legged and write letters to his wife every day. And so when that guy's in his upper bunk with his boxer shorts on, he looks like the Buddha. So we just named him, he became Buddha, and that was it.
Should I tell how the Buddha did his last show? The Buddha was there. Charlie, you had left. Somebody else, a rat face came on and replaced you or something. So rat face and the Buddha are switching over. Slarbob's putting one on lead. Next day, next guy plays lead. This goes on and on and on. And Schlarbaum knew face names too. So finally the Buddha spoke up after the one show and he goes, Chuck, and he goes, what do you want? I said, make up your mind who's playing lead, me or this other guy over here. So Schlarbaum turned around, he looked at he always looked at the center ring. Then he turned back around and he goes, well, you both suck so bad, I don't know who to put on lead. So finally he thinks about it for a second, he goes, rat face, you're my man.
You're my man.
You're my man. Buddha packed up his horn and left. It's the last I ever saw of Gene Holmes. But
Chris, going back, I just got a text from Jim Haverstrom, Mouseface, who was one of the band leaders, and he said he had a guy from North Texas also, and the guy said, Jim told him how hard the gig is to play in the circus. He goes, man, I'm in the 1 o'clock band, which is the best stage band at North Texas, and Jim said he lasted a couple weeks.
Yeah, it's a tough gig. So you're watching Circus History Live. Circus History Live is a monthly production by the Circus Historical Society. We get together and talk about circus history of the past, even of the future, and what's happening right now with circuses. I urge you to join us each month. We send out notes on that. And if you're not a member of the Circus Historical Society or the Windjammers Unlimited, I really would encourage you to consider joining both. Circus Historical Society has a quarterly magazine, The Bandwagon, Windjammers, among other things. They also put out Fanfare, but they have many circus recordings on their website. So if you love circus music, and you wouldn't be on this call or watching this if you didn't, I would encourage you to consider joining both. We're talking to Charlie Bertini and J.P. Cunningham right now. So in 1976, Charlie, you were back with the show and you were in a new job. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I had left in the end of 74, and Jimmy Isle was the bandmaster in 75, and that lasted one season. And then the management called me and asked me if I'd come back as bandmaster because they knew I knew the whole drill because Schlarbaum had pretty much trained me as an assistant. So, yeah, I went back in 76 as the band leader. I took some of the guys from my band in upstate New York, and we started on, a new kind of way of doing the music that was still traditional, but that still had some more contemporary sounds and treatments.
And when you listen to recordings of that era, I mean, you had some pretty interesting arrangements also with some of the more contemporary songs. Tell me a little bit about how you came up with those and who put together those arrangements for you.
So one of the things that we had was we'd get requests from the acts. So if an act said, "Oh, I want this" or "I want that," then we would, try to accommodate them. The flying act always gets a waltz. So one year, the flying, I said, we don't want some old waltz, the old timey stuff, which I loved that music. It was beautiful. But I did an arrangement of All Blues, the Miles Davis tune. So, and so we did that as kind of a 6/8, and the act loved it. And so then for the come down from the flying act, it's usually a gallop of some sort. And they didn't want that either. So I did an arrangement of Spain by Chick Corea. And, that was fun for us to play, and it really gave the act a kind of a contemporary, outlook. So one of the, and then Gene Nichols, who's logged on, was my euphonium player, and he also played bass trumpet, and he also played percussion things. And he did an arrangement for the spec. He did an arrangement of Mars from the Planets by Gustav Holst. Which is in 5/4 time and everything. It was just amazing that he wrote it for our band. And so these were things that weren't, they weren't done. And it made our band really contemporary. And like JP said, we were still a band with no electronics, no microphones, no keyboard, or any of that stuff. So it was kind of cool. One time we were in New Jersey, I think, and it was raining. So when the tent is wet, there's more reverb, and so we love that sound. It didn't just die when it came out. So we were, and it wasn't a full show, but we were just cranked. But this band played the same every day, every show, always, and so we were cranking on it and loving it because of the reverb. So after that matinee, a group of guys comes running over to us. And they were flipping out. I can't believe you played the whole Planets. I can't believe you played, Mars, whatever it was. You played Spain by Chick Corea. You played All Blues by Miles Davis. What the heck is going on? And they were all guys from the Buddy Rich band. They were staying at the hotel next door, and they all said, well, let's go see this circus, whatever it is. So we were tickled that those guys got to hear us. Anytime somebody recognize what we were doing was great for us. We'd like doing it no matter what. But
Did I tell the Phil Wilson story?
Yeah.
Well, I went to Berkeley for just a little while, and he was my teacher. And one day he sat me down. He says, "What are you doing here? You're not a jazz player. Why don't you go down and play the conservatory and play operatic music?" I said, "I don't want to do that either." So I left. And a few years later, I'm on the Clyde Beatty Circus Band, and Charlie's there with me. I said, we played around Boston. Let's go see Phil Wilson. So we go in there. What are you guys doing now? What are you doing now? And I said, Charlie says, I'm the bandmaster, and we're on Clyde Beatty-Cole Bros Circus. Oh my goodness. A circus band? When Ringling comes to town, my lips hurt for 2 weeks. He said, you guys must have chops of steel to be able to play that stuff. Well,
but that's
anyway,
That's so true, though. I mean, when you think about the fact that you're playing for 2 hours and then you take a couple of hours off and then you do it all over again, that's pretty amazing.
And the worst thing to do is to sleep between those shows. You don't do that. Come on, stay awake.
Can't do that. Yeah.
Even worse shape if you try to play that second show.
I think this picture here is that first year that you were back in '76, Charlie, and that's you up there in the upper left-hand corner. 3 kind of legends of the Beatty-Cole Circus. You've got Johnny Pugh on the left, Count Nicholas, who was ringmaster a couple of times on the show, and of course Dave Hoover. Tell me about these guys and working with these kind of legends.
Well, Johnny Pugh was all business. He was really good at his job. He was a nice man, but he was, very knew exactly what he wanted and how he wanted it. Count Nicholas was the perfect ringmaster because he was so full of it, unbelievable. But he was great at what he did, and he had done it everywhere, every place, every experience. He was a lot of fun to hang out with, and Dave Hoover learned from Clyde Beatty. And Hoover was all class, all business. He was a very, very nice man.
I like Dave Hoover. And in 72 and 3, yes, 72, 3 and 4, maybe 2, Schlarbaum would have a little stool beside him in the front, and he'd have a TV set up there. And Hoover and his wife Lois would watch some of the game. If Miami was playing, he had to watch that game. So, but when the show would start, I think he would leave the TV set on sometimes. Schlarbaum would. Somehow he could still play because he knew he had a band behind him to take over if he couldn't play. We could still stumble through the show without him. But I thought, what's this band? What's this TV set doing on the bandstand? But hey, that was Schlarbaum. So
When
Yeah,
you
the
guys,
management was around the TV. It was those little tiny TV sets with an antenna.
yeah, a little
It would go
TV.
underneath the trumpet stand, and then he would just say, "What's the score? What's the score of the game?"
He'd turn it off if Miami was losing. Then there'd be some act come on. Miami's winning again. The TV would go on again then say. So that's
when you guys were there, especially in the early 70s, you were around guys like Frank McCluskey, who owned the circus, people like Arnold Maley. These were like old timers who'd been around, in the 1920s and 30s with circuses. Really kind of interesting to kind of look back on that, too. You were kids at the time. Any recollection of, those folks?
Jeff Padden was the trombone player in '73 who was playing those smears with J.P. Jeff Padden got. You always want to get a job where you don't have to ride in the back of the band sleeper, which was a horrible place. You want to get a job riding with somebody, driving something or whatever. Jeff Padden got the job driving Mr. Maley, who was the front office. He had a Lincoln Continental, and so Jeff was his driver. So we'd all be getting in a seat wagon or some nasty circus truck, and Patton's driving a Lincoln Continental and getting paid pretty handsomely for it,
putting that Airstream behind it. Yes.
Yeah, pulling an Airstream. So, but I know that Frank McCluskey, the owner, put people in the office who all hated each other. So Edna Antes, Maley, they were all really good at their jobs, but none of them could stand each other. So they're all going to watch and make sure nobody else is stealing. Because they'll tell McCluskey, I saw Maley put money inside, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so he was smart in putting people in there that didn't trust each other.
And Edna Antes was on the phone every night to Mr. McCluskey, Frank McCluskey, telling him this and that. Who knows what went on? And
I fired a guy one time. Harry Okuba was his name, and he had a face name too, but we won't get into that. But anyway, he went to the front office to complain that he got fired. And so he said, I want to file a complaint. And they said, what is it? And he goes, I got fired. And I don't think I should. I was fired unjustly. I don't think I should be fired. And they said, who fired you? And he goes, Charlie Bertini. And they go, well, he's the music director. And he goes, yeah, well, he shouldn't have fired me. And they go, well, he's in charge of the department. So if he fired you, you're fired.
I think he liked that too much.
Yeah, he filed a complaint with the AFM, and then I told them why I fired him, and there was never heard another word about it.
I don't think Schlarbaum really fired anybody. He would, we scream at him so much that they would just leave. Except this one drummer. I have to bring this one drummer in. Paul Cirillis, older guy than we were, and a really good drummer out of Philadelphia. And one day Schlarbaum was screaming at him. It was a wet day, and his drum set was rolling all over the bandstand. I guess Schlarbaum was screaming at him. I don't remember that. But the show ended. He put his drumsticks down. He stood up, and he wasn't a very big guy, but he went right up to Schlarbaum, and he stuck his finger in Schlarbaum's chest. Don't you ever humiliate me in front of the band like that again. It's not my fault this bandstand is crooked and my drums. It's your fault. You're the band leader. Make it right. And Schlarbaum backed down. That's the only time I ever really saw him back down. A little drifty, he settled him down there. So
Wasn't there a story too about a drummer who actually left in the middle of the show? Or
there's some of those. Can I tell it, JP?
You tell that one.
We were in North Carolina, I think, and so Chuck goes, the new drummer's coming on for the matinee. So this guy shows up. You would think this is '73, so you think you'd wear a white shirt and black pants if you don't know what the uniform is. He shows up with red and white checkered pants like a tablecloth, and he's got a drum set that's all pretty and shiny and everything. And so he starts. There's no rehearsal or anything. Chuck's going to tell him a gallop, a waltz, a march, and just get through it. And this guy's not getting it. And then he brought his agent. He goes, hey, Chuck, this here's my agent. And the guy's got bubble sunglasses like Roy Orbison. And so Chuck goes, agent? So anyway, the guy starts playing, and the first thing is a fanfare, and then the William Tell Storm scene. And this guy has no idea what to do, and so Schlarbaum starts screaming at him, and he says, "Quit playing that! Quit playing those cymbals!" So he just takes his foot, and he kicks his cymbals off the stand. I mean, they just went flying off the stand, and then the next thing he kicks off is the snare drum, because the guy's supposed to be going digga 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 digga. He just takes his foot and kicks the snare drum off the stand, and then finally the guy is in shock, and so he's just sitting there. And now all you got is boop 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 the bass drum. Schlarbaum puts his foot on the bass drum and rolls it off the bandstand. He goes, "Get out of here! Take your agent and get the hell out of here!" So then he goes, "Charlie, go get the drum set." That guy he didn't even last through the cat act.
So what do you do in a situation like that? I mean, who picked up the drums for the rest of the show?
The guy and his agent, they picked up the drums and left.
No, I mean, who was playing for the rest of the show?
Well, I had to go get the drum set and set it up and play the rest of the show, and I played for 3 weeks or something. So.
Another time, a drummer came on, and we had 2 shows, of course. He plays the first show, and then all of a sudden, it's time for the second show. Where's the drummer at? Well, he went to the next town. So, I think Charlie had to play that one too. Somebody had to play the drums. But
so for people who that's been over 50 years now since this happened. And if you look back, if we had been doing this in 1973 instead of 2026, it would have been. We've been talking about things that were happening in the early 1920s. So when you look back on that, for a lot of people, it's kind of difficult for them to imagine what it was like in the backyard, even things like a cookhouse. Tell me about what that was like, having your meals in the cookhouse.
Go ahead, JP, because you and I have totally different versions of the cookhouse.
Well, when I first came on, the cook was Gooey Louie for obvious reasons. The food was not all that good. And then after he left, we had a Froggy, who was a heavy-set guy and did props. He went into the cookhouse. One day, one of the tanks blew up. He came out like the Hulk. His shirt was all ripped and torn and everything. But you didn't want to get the first tray of food after the intermission, because he would chew tobacco and he would like lean on and it would dribble into the plate. So you made sure not to get the first tray. So the food was not all that bad to me. If they ever did have stuffed peppers, I like stuffed peppers. And most of the band goes, "I don't want that pepper." I said, "Give me all the peppers. I don't care. You got the meat. I want them." But they didn't like stuffed peppers. And mostly it was just chili mac and things like that. And it was better than some circuses we saw. So the food wasn't all that bad. I ate in the Navy, and it wasn't much better.
Charlie, you differing on viewpoint?
I can. And I know JP, he would eat the food. He'd eat every meal in there. And, also don't forget, this was the early 70s, mid 70s. There wasn't like, a Kentucky Fried Chicken, Taco Bell, McDonald's. You didn't have alternative. You couldn't go get a bunch of power bars at Walmart. You had to eat this stuff. We didn't have refrigeration. We just had a cooler. So it wasn't like you could go make some turkey sandwiches out of your stuff in the cooler.
We were traveling every night anyway, so we could stop in a diner, big outlet stop.
That might be the meal, but I couldn't stand the slop that came out of that cookhouse. It was on the kind of trays you have in prison, those metal trays.
Metal trays.
So
clean. They're pretty clean. And the water just came out of the water. I saw what they did with the water truck. They go out and fill up, open up this hydrant. Rusty water would come out. They'd let it run for a while. Fill up the water truck, and then put a couple of gallons of bleach in there. We drank that. And somehow I'm still living here after all these iced teas or whatever they made out of it, Kool-Aid. Bottled water, there's no such thing back then. So
you talk about moving the show, and Beatty-Cole was known in those days. The show would move at night. They would strike the show. The big top would come down at night. Might be raining out. Weather might be bad. They'd pack that canvas up, move to the next town. In those early days, the show was still going pretty far west. I mean, you guys probably went from DeLand, Florida, all the way out into Texas and Oklahoma back in those early days, right?
Played Carlsbad, New Mexico one year.
New Mexico, yeah.
But that's about the furthest Texas. We went, but we're all over Texas. The border towns, one night in a row. So
thousands of miles and playing a couple of shows a day and moving to the next town. it was a hearty lot that was out there eating in that cookhouse for sure.
Yeah.
It was.
I just got another note from Jim Haverstrom about cases and penalties. So
Yeah, get into that too.
we had, the band sleeper had to be locked, and the last musician out of the band sleeper, make sure they lock the padlock. So if because we're all on the bandstand, so if somebody's going to rob the band sleeper, you know when to do it during the show. So if you were the last person out and you didn't lock it, you got fined a case of beer. You also got to find a case of beer if it was your birthday. So it's not your fault, it's your birthday, but you owe a case of beer to the band sleeper.
I love that rule because my birthday was in February. I never had to pay.
Yeah. And of course that changed too. I remember one time I showed up for Jim Earp, Boot Hill, and he was having chop problems. He said, "Can you come out and do a few days for me in Florida so my chops can rest?" And I said, "Sure." So I showed up and I brought a bunch of beer and stuff. And I go, "Here you go, guys." And they go, "Oh, nobody drinks beer except ranch or something."
That's too bad,
What band sleeper is this? So that was things changed over time, but
obviously the performance for the most part is pretty much the same. There's no clock. People are listening to the music. I know Keith Green over on Ringling said once that even going back to Merle Evans, the kind of emergency song they would play would be 12th Street Rag. And when the clowns heard 12th Street Rag, they knew they had to grab their clubs and get out into the ring. What was your emergency music on Beatty-Cole in those days?
that was Broadway One Step.
Carl King's Broadway runs One Step.
Yeah, but the classic emergency, like for something really bad, like a blowdown or fire and stuff, was the Stars and Stripes Forever.
Yeah.
But you never had to play that, I wouldn't imagine.
Now and then, maybe, very rarely.
I think we might have played it a couple times. We had a blowdown once in Rochester where the tent blew up against a baseball, stadium and stuff. So that it blew like a wet napkin up against the stadium. But no, Broadway One Step, that meant something screwy happened, rigging, animals, something, and that means that the show is not going on as it should. And I think I mentioned this earlier, but the band is the clock for the circus. You can't say, all right, the show starts at 4 and my juggling act goes on at 4:22. It goes on after the poodles are done beforehand. If you hear the poodle music's over or almost over, you got to get your butt into the big top. So the band was the clock for the show. And also, if somebody had a girlfriend in the next town, we could speed up the tempos just a little bit, and out of a 2-hour show, you could make it to like an hour and 50. Shave maybe 10 minutes by just making things a little bit brighter because everybody moves a little faster because, like I said, the band was the clock.
And I never wanted to be late for the show. So I'm even giving Maxine trouble now because if it's 4:30, I'm supposed to be someplace, I want to be there at 4:15. I don't want to be late. And she goes, "I'm never late." Well, she's there at 4:29 or something, I'm sorry, that's late to me. So I blame Mr. Mouse on that one because I never wanted to be late. I wanted to make sure I was there on time all the time. So that's just
we talk about those charts that they played, that you guys played. I got to think that after playing them, hours and hours, day after day after day, you're not necessarily reading music, or are you? I mean, the guy that came in and had to play the storm scene from Williams' Overture, and never having heard that tempo, I'm sure. I mean, your guys knew the music pretty well, didn't they, after playing it?
Oh, yeah. It was sort of automatic after a while. Right, Charlie?
Yeah, I used to like having the music just because it gave me something to turn, something to look at, just to stay familiar. Some of the guys would memorize the show right away, and they only needed the music. If you went farther in the music, like let's say the chimpanzees aren't behaving, well, now all of a sudden you got to go into the next strain of the music that you haven't done in months and months and months. Well, if you don't have your book on the stand, it gets real quiet really quick in your chair.
Wow.
I'm sure it
Also,
does. Now, this is you had been the bandmaster musical director for a season here, so this is pretty much your band, right? For '77 that you had.
yep. I didn't have the turnover that other guys had. Now I see the professor again down on the right, squatting down. So he couldn't do the whole year because he was a professor at the University of Wisconsin. So he might have been on for a few months in the summer. And what I might have done, I don't really remember. I might have hired a trumpet player and said, "You can come on from April when we open, and then you're done by June 20th." And then the professor would come on and play until September when he had to go back and teach, and then they'd hire another guy. One year, I hired Gramps, Charlie Stevenson, who played baritone, and he was a band leader on the was it Carson and Barnes and other shows too. But I hired him to come on and play the second trumpet book, because his show had closed. So, we made it all work. But that was pretty much the band for the whole year of that band.
So, Charlie, you ended up leaving the band, and JP stayed on for a few more seasons. Actually, JP, you were there, I guess, when the last big brass band was still part of the show, right?
1996, the final year of the 8-piece band, right? Then they went
Yeah.
down to 4-piece. And Johnny Pugh even came up to me toward the end of the 96 season. And he said, I can't afford to have the band any longer. It's costing me so much money, and I'm going to have to downsize. But you can still come back. I said, and do what? He said, well, you can play in the band. Or I said, no, I'm not going to be the only trombone player. He said, well, you can still do the mail and cherry pie, setting up the seat. No, I'm not going to do that. Besides, I'd been on there long enough, 25 years. I was ready to get off the bandstand. I felt sorry for the younger guys, but they found work, so it worked out for me. And then they opened up a job for me to do the coupons after that with my second wife. So I'm 45 years with the same organization.
Pretty amazing.
I can't complain.
So again, here's your band in '78. You've got a different trumpet player. The professor's not there, at least for this photo, but a good young band.
Yeah, there was no turnover in this band at all. This was
Isn't that Mr. Buttface there beside you?
a Buttface. Yeah, he should be logged on, and his brother. Jim Butoff and his brother Ken Butoff is, I think, watching. But this was a fabulous band, and by now we had kind of worked out all of the chemistry, I guess is the best way. The tuba player, Hugh Rankin, also played electric bass. And so I didn't want a bass amp on stage. So we put his bass amp underneath the bandstand. And so then he played electric bass on, the pop tunes and stuff like that, like Spain and stuff that I was talking about. And so we had that was the only electric instrument, but it was kind of a nice thing because it gave the band even more depth and everything. But this was an awesome band right here. And it was my last band on the Beatty Show. And there is a terrific recording of this band that Windjammers have. So if you want the Windjammers, you can listen to it, download it, do whatever you want. So.
Yeah, this is, and again, when I look at this photograph and think back to 1978 myself, I mean, these guys are all excellent musicians. They could probably be playing anywhere. Young guys who are playing traditional circus music. I think it's fantastic what you were able to do there, guys, to kind of keep that alive during those years. Pretty amazing, actually.
We were proud of that band, that's for sure.
And you know who else would come and see the show from time to time, and I'm going to put up a picture here, and you can tell me the stories about that, is the great Merle Evans himself. He was a familiar sight around the show when it was in Florida.
Yeah, I can tell you the band members there. The guy with the sunshades, that's Tim Stambaugh, Mr. Troll. That's Mud beside him. That's the Creeper, the tall guy. I'm beside the Creeper, and then we had Sea Hunt on the other side. And Merle Evans, he loved our band. He really liked our band a lot. He came to the show one time. Before the show started, he's in the office talking to Johnny Pugh, and finally Johnny Pugh says, well, do you want a ticket to see the show? Well, I damn well didn't come here just to talk to you. Of course, I want to see the show. I loved it. So, but yeah, he really liked the band. He's got a program in his hand right there. He's well into those 90s when that picture was taken. So,
Yeah. Well, I think it's terrific that you brought back probably a bit of his youth to him at that time. Also, I'm gonna probably close this down now, but I want to kind of look back on those days and what you have done since. And I'll start with you, JP. You said you spent 25 years with the band and another 20 years with the same organization. I mean, circus has changed a lot. Tell me a little bit about your life as you reflect back on it, and especially those days under canvas playing the trombone.
you mean afterwards or, after I
Just your
come?
life as you look back on those years.
Oh, I look back, I think they were great. I loved every moment of it. There were later years in the 80s and 90s. Some of the guys would say, "Can't we change the music?" I said, "Change the music for what? Why reason? What reason? Why didn't you just try playing every show perfectly if you could possibly do that? Don't change the music." When Philadelphia and we're going to Lancaster the next day, they don't know what the music is. Just try to play a perfect show. And of the 12,500 shows roughly I played, I told Maxine one time, there was probably a handful, maybe 5, 10 times, that I knew I wasn't going to make a mistake. I knew I was going to play the show. I wasn't going to miss a cutoff. I wasn't going to miss a note. I knew everything was perfect. And what a feeling that is when you know you can't do any better than what you just did. To make yourself that happy, there was only a couple times. It was like a bowler bowling a 300 game. You can't be any better. So there was a couple shows like that. Most of them I did pretty good, I thought. So I must have done pretty good. They get 8 band leaders. And I told my dad that. I said, "Dad, I've gone through 8 band leaders." And he said, "Son, maybe you're the problem." And, and I was mad at the time. But then after I thought about it, I said, he might have had a problem. I was a nonconformist toward the end. But after the show ended, and I still did the couponings with my second wife, Edna Voigt, and some of the guys in the band thought I was going to marry Edna Antes. I said, "No, she's a little too old for me." So that didn't work out. But and then now to build with Maxine. If it wasn't for Maxine, I probably wouldn't go see any circuses now.
Maxine House, who is JP's wife, and she's very active in circus fans and great
I got my name up
supporter.
there now instead of Maxine House. So in case you didn't know, I was J.P. Cunningham. But I thank Maxine for me continuing with the circus, and we go see all the circuses we can see. So not the same as they used to be, but that's life. It's not going to be the same again.
Charlie, you've maintained your role as a musician, as a great trumpet player. You weren't with the circus as long as JP was, but you certainly have continued your career with your jazz career, your records that you've made. I think you've made 7 records. Tell us a little bit about, as you reflect back on your life, both with the circus and also now what you're doing as a jazz trumpeter.
The circus, the Clyde Beatty Circus specifically, was I always called it Beatty School of Music. So for me, it was it was learning everything I needed to learn. There weren't any professors. There wasn't any theory classes or anything else. But I learned everything I needed to learn about trumpet playing, band leading, stamina, endurance, chops, range, everything I learned on the Clyde Beatty Circus. So I just took that and kept my career going, but I couldn't have done it without that kind of groundwork. But Beatty School of Music was what that was for me. And I look back on it now, and we're talking about all the hardships of, living in the band sleeper and things like that. But I don't care about that. What I care about is what I learned and how I learned it and how I continued using it and stuff, because those are the things I know. And there's some of the cats that are logged on right now. They can say the same thing. This wasn't a big part of our lives, but it was a really, really important part of our lives. For JP, it was a lot longer, but for some of us, 2 seasons, 3 seasons and stuff. But you never ever forget what you gained and what you learned from the Beatty School of Music. So I and now. Having had a really successful trumpet playing career, I'm friends with a lot of really successful trumpet players, and they all go, oh my God, you did the circus. Well, I could never do that. I could, blah, 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 so the respect and admiration for having been a circus musician runs deep. And I'm really, really proud of that.
And maybe they couldn't have done it either. You don't know.
Yeah.
Don Covington, who's on the call here, who's been very active as a circus musician and also with Windjammers, points out that there are circus bands that are out there today in the United States. Big Apple has a great band, Vasquez, Flip, even the Zope family, Italian Family Circus, has a live band. So it does still exist, but you guys were definitely there during the heyday. I want to thank you both for joining us again today. And I'm going to send this off now by playing the blow-off music from the 1970s, mid 1970s that you guys were playing on when the show would end. The Billboard March played as only you guys could play it. Thanks again for joining us. Bruce, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. This was terrific. And before the show began, Chris and I were talking about this, and he called me twice today and said, "This is going to be a great show." It was a great show, and thank you so much for being on tonight with us. I also like to thank Chris, of course, for being our host. And behind the scenes, Anya Norris, who does all of our post-production and social media, posting this program up on our Circus Historical Society YouTube channel. And also, I'd like to thank all of you for watching. And most of you are members. Some of you are not. If you're not a member, as Chris mentioned, please go to circushistory.org and join our group. It's a terrific organization. We're coming up on our convention. It's going to be in Baraboo, which is the home of Ringling Brothers Circus until around the early 1900s, before they moved to Bridgeport, where I live. But we're going to have a terrific convention in Baraboo in June 10 through 13. If you're interested in coming, please go to the website, circushistory.org, and go to the convention page, and you can find all the information you need. So before I sign off, I just wanted to give Charlie last comments or...
Yeah, I just want to thank there's been a lot of comments coming in through the chats, and I get to see those too. And so I just want the people who sent those to know that we did receive them and I did read them, and I appreciate that. And again, thanks to all the Beatty musicians who took the time to log on and stuff, and my family as well. But it's really nice. It kind of shows what a group it really is when all these Beatty cats log on here to see what JP and I have to say.
Terrific. JP, final words?
I want to thank you, Bruce and Chris. This has been fantastic. And I see all these names up here, face names up here. I see Karen Gersh. I see Don Covington, Bill Perkins, Mark Glazel, and other people. It's been fantastic. I'm glad you could all come in. Oh, Bev out in Vegas. It's been great. I had a great time.
And Chris, one more.
Just see you down the road. We're going to do it again. We're going to get some more of these Beatty School of Music people on this Circus History Live. So thank you.
Absolutely. Good night, everybody, and we'll see you down the road.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.